Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 147 called Aaron and MJ. Today's episode is presented by Belly. Belly offers modern prenatal vitamins optimized for fertility, prenatal, and post-pregnancy health. To learn more about how to optimize your fertility and pregnancy health, check out their vegan-friendly, dairy-free, non-GMO vitamins for both men and women at bellybaby.com. That's spelled BELIBABY.com. The best part, if you use code ALLIE15, you'll get 15% off your first month of either Belly Women or Belly Men. Again, that's code ALLIE15, ALI15 for 15% off. Thanks, Belly. Oh my gosh, you guys, I love this couple that I'm talking to today. So today's guests are Aaron and MJ. They are the co-authors of Men in Miscarriage, A Dad's Guide to Grief, Relationships, and Healing After Loss, which is a book that came out earlier in 2021, like the summer. God, I wish this book were out while I was going through it. In the book, they're a married couple, and they talk about not only their experiences going through infertility and family building and loss, but they also interview a bunch of other couples as well. So it's a great book. Definitely check it out. And we're going to hear more about their story today. So I want to thank them for being a part of this. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. And without further ado, this is Aaron and MJ's infertility story. All right. So Aaron and MJ, hi guys. How are you?
Great.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
I love talking to couples. I haven't done a ton of couple interviews, but I think it's really interesting just to get kind of the two different perspectives. Because even though, you know, as a partnership, you're going through the same experience, it is very different, I've found, for, you know, the two different people. So I'd love to just start with how you guys met. How did you get together?
Oh boy.
That's a funny story.
All right. Tell me.
Well, technically, you know, we met in the 6th grade.
Ooh.
So yeah, we both went to Norton Middle School, and our families kind of knew each other in Massachusetts. And, you know, I'd be lying if I said we never dated. We didn't even really like each other, honestly. She ran with a rougher crowd than I.
Oh, stop it.
You're from the wrong side of the tracks, MJ.
Yeah, really.
Oh my God. What did a rough crowd look like in 6th grade?
Well, I was kind of the, you know, this was more years ago than I care to admit. So I was the preppy sports kid in the silk shirts and, you know, the Z Cavaricis thinking.
Oh my God. Yes. I feel like we're probably around the same age. My husband used to wear Z Cavaricis too.
And I was from like the divorced family living in 2 different towns kind of scenario.
Okay. Broken home and all that. Yeah. That was also my reality. I was a child of divorced parents as well.
I joke with her, but we just didn't have the same friends. We didn't run the same social circles or anything. And then I think first year of high school, you left for MJ left for Philadelphia, or just outside of Philadelphia in Norristown. And honestly, you know, I don't think either of us ever thought we'd see the other one again. We certainly didn't talk or write or anything. And randomly after high school, we both ended up at the same very tiny college up in the Berkshires in Massachusetts called Mass College of Liberal Arts.
Okay.
And we still actually never dated or anything. I was going through kind of a wild phase. So MJ did not. I tried to date MJ. She was not having it at the time.
She wasn't having it. All right. Tell me about your wild phase. What did that look like?
Well, you know, I was a sheltered suburban kid. And then I got to college, which was still sheltered and suburban, but I had freedom. And I just kind of, you know, I never drank in high school. I never did anything. I was kind of, you know, preppy honors student, goody two shoes. And then got to college, and I was one of those kids who had never gone crazy. And so I went crazy and just kind of overdosed on freedom and found beer, and life was never the same.
Okay. So when did it come together? MJ, did you guys remember each other, and like you were, how did it shake out?
I remembered Aaron. We were in the same class together, and I confronted him after a class one day and said, I know you. And he claims that this story isn't true, but I said, I know you. And he's like, who the fuck are you?
I don't think I said that. But
he was drunk. He doesn't remember.
Yeah, right. I was trying to put some distance between high school and college. So I was not thrilled to see someone who knew me from high school there. But we became friends, and then we stayed friends even after college. And then I think it was 3 years after college in 2004, we both ended up at the same house party. And I was truthfully there for someone else, but
yeah, you were there.
That didn't work out. And then MJ and I were both kind of tipsy in the kitchen. And she said, I've always liked you. And I said, no, you haven't. I said, I've tried to hit on you repeatedly for years. And, one thing led to another, and one drunken kiss outside in the backyard behind the woodshed. And here we are.
I can totally picture it. Okay. Yep. That's how a lot of good relationships begin, right? Okay. So fast forwarding to when you guys were, in a more serious relationship, did you guys talk about family and having kids?
Oh yeah.
I think Aaron was the first person to bring it up that he wanted kids, and he wanted them immediately, like have a honeymoon baby. And I was a little bit more hesitant about that idea.
Okay.
I had like I said, I had kind of gone crazy in college. And then when I found out MJ actually liked me, and I really had always liked her. So I kind of embedded myself in her life like a tick. And I was not letting her get away because I knew that I could spend my life with her. I think I told her that we were going to get married on our second date, which was, I took her to a wedding. So
okay.
I was definitely all in, and I could see everything with her. So I was definitely pushing that more than she was.
Were you like, go catch that bouquet? We're next. What were the conversations like after you guys did get married, and when did you start to try to have babies?
Well, after a long conversation with Aaron and going back and forth, we had agreed that we were going to start trying earlier.
Mm-hmm. Did you try for the honeymoon baby?
No, we practiced, but
MJ got really sick just a couple weeks after we got married. So like our first Valentine's Day was spent with MJ in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. And
whoa, what happened?
Crohn's disease.
Okay.
Yeah, it was undiagnosed for a long time. And then finally they came out with Crohn's. And so we had to get that all straightened out before we could really start trying. And then I think we started trying in earnest late 2006.
Uh-huh. Does the Crohn's have anything to do with fertility, MJ? Did they say anything about that?
No, the medicine that I was on, you just can't conceive on it because it's not healthy for a pregnancy. So we have to wait until I was more stable with the Crohn's before we tried.
Okay.
So we got married in 2006. So we started trying in 2007, January of 2007.
Yeah, a little earlier is the end of 2006, because the first time MJ got pregnant, I'm a fanatic Boston sports fan. And so I date everything with sporting events. And so
I love it.
I remember the first time that you were pregnant, I was going to the AFC Championship game in January of 2007 in Indianapolis. So that was the first time, and that was also our first loss. I think that was 6-7 weeks at that point.
Yeah. So tell me about that. When you found out you were pregnant, obviously you guys, I'm sure, were thrilled. Did it seemingly go okay for the first couple of weeks?
I actually didn't know I was pregnant. Yeah. So, and then one of my best friends had said, you probably should take a test. If you haven't had your period, it's probably a good idea. So I took a test and it came up positive, but I still wasn't feeling quote unquote pregnant. Mm-hmm. Those symptoms that you have. So that was kind of a telltale sign that something was amiss the first time around, for me, at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And of course, I think at the time, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were like, oh, maybe we should wait to tell people. And I was like, hell no, I was a journalist. Like, I'm used to breaking news. So
right.
I was all gung ho at the time. And so we did, we told everybody, we told our parents, we told everybody. And then right before I left for that trip, MJ miscarried for the first time. And that was just devastating.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So if you don't mind, can you tell me about that? Like, was it something that happened at home? Like you start bleeding, or did you go to the doctor and there wasn't a heartbeat, or like, what did that look like for you?
I was at work and started bleeding, and I just came out of the bathroom hysterically crying. And at that time I had a really tight knit staff. And one of my colleagues that I worked with said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm miscarrying. I can't believe this. I'm bleeding everywhere." And all they did was just hug me,
Yeah.
And a huge support system there. But the problem is I worked an hour away from Aaron and I had to make that drive by myself in the car, knowing full well that I was miscarrying.
Oh, that must have been torture.
And then the next day I went to the doctor and they actually told me that I was never pregnant, which I thought was weird, that I had a positive pregnancy test and that the blood test said that it was negative. So I'm not sure why that had to happen.
Yeah. I feel like, did they say it was like a miscarriage or like a chemical pregnancy or something? Like,
I was so devastated that even if they had told me, I probably wouldn't have remembered.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that I always say, that I feel like, fuck that. It doesn't matter how far along you are. And I feel like that not that your doctors were doing this, but if anybody, discredits like, oh, it was early, it's not as hard. Like, I feel like I always say a loss is a loss. So I'm sorry for your loss. And it doesn't matter if it was early or further along,
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And, MJ was just she was just really out of it and devastated. And, like I said, I was a reporter at the time. So my defense mechanism is flipping my switch and going into like research and reporter mode. So I did the worst thing you can do, which is hit the internet and look for, why did this happen? What causes miscarriage? And, there's a lot of shitty information out there. I wasn't helping because I'm asking her questions like, did you lift anything heavy? Like, did you go for a run? And all these things are stupid because that doesn't really cause miscarriage, as I know now, but I didn't know then as a 20-something moron. And it was also tough for me because I had never even considered the possibility of a miscarriage or a loss. Like, it wasn't anything that I ever thought about. It never entered my head. And so when it happened, it was just like, what is this thing? Like, this can happen. And first of all, like, is it happening to me? Am I a part of this or not? And that it sounds silly, but as a man, you don't really know the answer to that. At least I didn't know the answer to that, because this is something that's happening to her and it's happening to her body. And so I thought, all my attention should be on her. I need to make sure she's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But also, I did not give myself permission to feel anything. I beat myself up for feeling sad. I'm like, oh God, I'm thinking to myself, you selfish jerk. Like, what is the problem right now? She's hurting and you're worried about how you feel, because in my head, I had named this kid. I had thought out a future for this kid. I had envisioned everything that happened, which, it might be silly at 6 or 7 weeks, but I still did it, as I'm sure a lot of people do.
Absolutely.
It was just gone. The rug is pulled out from under you. But as a man in this society, you don't have the, emotional bandwidth you don't have the luxury to feel that, you're supposed to be a rock and a protector and, suck it up and rub some dirt on it. And so that's what I defaulted to. And I buried all those feelings deep down and focused on MJ and, made stupid jokes like, oh, at least we get to try again, which is
right. Exactly. It's just what a woman wants to hear. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm so glad that you said that, Aaron. And, I know you guys co-authored this amazing book called Men in Miscarriage, A Dad's Guide to Grief, Relationships, and Healing After Loss, which I do want to delve into. I'm not sure at what point in your journey you wrote that book, but before you answer that, I think it's really interesting that you do talk about men not knowing how to feel or how to express their feelings, and how, like you said, it's confusing because it's happening to their partner, but it is also happening to you as the man, as the husband, as the partner. So I think it's great that you're opening up that conversation, and that with the book, you're allowing guys to grieve as well. Because like you said, I think societal pressures to, suck it up. It's not about you, like it's so prevalent. So I think it's just really cool that you guys did that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when did that book come into play? Like, when did you guys, because it just came out, right? This year?
Yeah.
So it happened later in your story, right?
Yeah. We didn't put all this down, fully. Yeah. And I had had a dad blog for a while, starting in 2008. And I chronicled some of it there, but we didn't really sit down and hash it all out in book form until within the last year. So it's with a lot of hindsight and perspective gained, which I think is good. And the way that we wrote it, it's kind of like dual perspective. So I mean, different fonts in the book for when I'm talking versus when MJ's talking, because like you said earlier, we went through the same set of, we went through the same situations, but our takes on it were very, very different. And we didn't, we knew that they were different before, but we really didn't learn how different until we sat down and wrote out our feelings on the same subject in book form, which is really, really weird to do. And a quick story on that. So, we wrote this book in a Google Doc, and, we kind of did it very separately by design. I didn't want to color anything she was thinking. So we would write separately, not together. And I'd kind of write a chapter, and then she would chime in with her take on it. And I learned some things that I did not know at all at the time, and that caused some new discussions here for, I won't spoil everything, but one instance was finding out in the book. So I opened this Google Doc as we're writing this book together,
right?
Reading what MJ wrote. And I find out that she was so, kind of devastated after a bunch of our losses that she had the doctor put her on birth control and didn't tell me.
Ooh, scandalous.
It was.
And so I'm downstairs in the basement, read this, and I'm like, what the fuck? I yell up. I'm like, are you kidding me? And those were 4 months of like probably our lowest point. I think we had 3 or 4 losses by then. Yeah. And, I had found out that I was dealing with male infertility, and I was beating myself up every day that we weren't pregnant then. And then to find out, she was on birth control for 4 months and I didn't know it.
Wow.
It was awful.
So what's your side of that, MJ? Why didn't you tell him?
I'm not looking back now. I'm not sure exactly why I didn't tell him. I was just ashamed of so many miscarriages.
Oh.
And the doctor, after my 4th DNC, leaned over and said, do you think it's time? And I was like, yeah, I think it's time. Time to go back on birth control.
Okay.
But I wish Aaron had been part of the conversation. I think things might have been a little different, but it's my body. It was my choice, but he should be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So I don't want to breeze over, the 4 DNCs and the miscarriages, but can you guys talk me through? So after that first loss, how long before you had another one, and then another, and then another, and how many total?
Let's see. Total. So MJ's been pregnant 8 or it's 8 or 9 times, and we have 3 children. So it's 5 or 6 losses, all kind of at different stages. I think we had 1 loss before we had Will in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Then the biggest struggle for us was trying to conceive our second child. That's why there's a 5.5 year age difference between them. We lost, the first one was a first trimester loss. So were the next 2, I think, 1 or 2.
Oh, so sorry.
The big one came when we thought we were in the clear. We got one, we got a pregnancy that stuck. Well, first of all, we went through, we hadn't gone through IVF then.
No,
that's what I was going to say. Were these natural
These were natural so far. So we're in 2010 now. And, we had 3 losses. We got one that stuck. We got to the 12-week mark. We were cautiously optimistic. And then they said, oh yeah, it's good. We celebrated. We were so happy. That happiness, we posted everywhere because we were at the 12-week mark. That happiness lasted another 24 hours until the radiologist called us back and said, hey, actually, do you mind coming in again? We saw, it's probably nothing, but we saw something, upon further review, we saw something in the ultrasound that we want to check it out. Just, can you come back? And so, of course, we're we're just paranoid. Mm-hmm. We go back the next day, and sure enough, the baby's legs were not separating. Everything was fine except for the legs, which weren't coming apart.
Oh my gosh.
Ultrasound after ultrasound, and they just kept trying to get the baby to move more, but the legs never opened up.
Oh my gosh. What do they call that? There's got to be a name for that, right?
Yeah, it ended up being, they couldn't diagnose it at first. The worst part was we had to wait another 4 weeks until the baby matured more so that they could get a better look. And it ended up being Sirenomelia, which is known as Mermaid Syndrome.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a condition where it's exactly like it sounds. The legs are fused together, just like a mermaid. But also the devastating part is, there's no bladder, no kidneys, no anus, missing.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was. And
I'm so sorry, you guys. So how did you process that? And what happened? Did you have to terminate for medical reasons, or how does that play out?
Yeah. So this was a hell of a story. We were around a little past 16 weeks, I think 17 weeks.
17. Yeah.
And we're near Boston. So we went to great hospitals to see amazing doctors. And I remember it being very tough. The doctors were very nice, but this is a rare condition. It's about 1 in 100,000. Mm-hmm. And so they were very nice, but they were also you could tell they were kind of excited to see something like that because none of them had.
Oh.
So we were like this novelty circus act or something. That's how I felt anyway. And they wanted to, and we volunteered, we volunteered the baby for research after, but they gave us a choice. They said, look, we can get you in 10 to 14 days in the hospital for a termination, but because this isn't considered life-threatening. So we have a 10 to 14 day wait, but at that point you'd be past 18 weeks. You'd have probably a 50-50 chance of whether you could have an abortion or whether you'd have to deliver a stillborn. Mm-hmm. Or you can go to our affiliated clinic in the next couple of days and have an abortion. And so that was the decision that we were left with, which is a terrible decision.
Brutal.
Well, you say we had the decision. Ultimately, it was my decision.
Yeah.
And that was where some of the stress came in because Aaron kept saying, it's your decision. It's your decision. You need to make the decision. And he wasn't giving me a whole lot of input.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, I'm a very pro-choice person and always have been. And I think bodily autonomy for women should be sacrosanct. And so it was real hard for me she's like, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, I don't think that I can do that. I don't think that's my place.
Yeah, I totally understand both sides of that. It's, and MJ, I'm sure it was why are you putting all this on me? The pressure. But Aaron, you were trying to do kind of the right thing in your beliefs and, my body, my choice, like you said earlier, MJ. So that's so complicated. How did you guys finally work through that?
Ultimately, I found out that when you give birth in Massachusetts, you get a birth certificate and a death certificate. And I personally could not receive that.
That's right. Yeah. I forgot that was your dividing line.
That was ultimately my line in the sand.
It would just be too heartbreaking for you.
Yeah, it was too much to know that there's an actual birth certificate out there.
Yeah, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense.
So we opted to go to the clinic.
Yeah.
And, that's when a whole new set of circumstances happened, because maybe it's just because we grew up in, Massachusetts. It's this blue liberal bubble. And, that's what everyone thinks of it. But when we got to the clinic, there were people outside screaming and holding signs. And it was just like
protesters.
Yeah, they were anti-choice protesters. I was stunned, and MJ was stunned. We didn't expect to see that in Brookline, Massachusetts, but there they were. And so, they shouted, you're killing your unborn baby. And they had this stupid signs, and MJ was just gutted. I mean, devastated. And so was I, but she was the one going in for surgery. And I couldn't be in there. They don't let partners into the surgery. So I didn't know what to do. I just knew that I couldn't sit in that waiting room. And this is, again, 2010. I think I had just gotten my first phone with video capabilities. So I went, I was a reporter at the time, so I knew my rights. I knew what I couldn't do. I went outside on the sidewalk with my phone, and I asked them questions and confronted them, and it was all on tape. And they were, they really had no answers. I don't think people like that are used to being called on the carpet and used to being confronted, because they're preying on people on one of the worst days of their lives. But I thought it was really important to at least say something, and I did. And that's the first time I ever experienced anything like going viral. It's on YouTube. You can still see it today. What does somebody look for if they want to find it on YouTube? What do they search? You probably search dad confronts abortion protesters.
Okay. And what did you say?
I just said, you don't know any of these people or any of their circumstances, and yet you're judging them and shaming them on the worst day of their life. And it's despicable. It's, it's just totally garbage behavior. And, I was barely holding it together anyway. And I was not as, I think about all the things I would have liked to have said, and they brought up, women commit suicide at higher rates after an abortion. And I wish I had said, maybe it's because they have people out here shaming them on the street. That certainly doesn't help. If you're worried about suicides, maybe stop yelling at, fragile people.
Yeah.
So, it only lasted a couple minutes, but it was just something I thought that I had to do. And then with MJ's permission, and she even wrote a blog post to accompany it. We put it online, and it went crazy. It went to all the, the sites that you would see it on in 2010, boing, boing, boing. And,
right.
Alternet and all these things.
Yeah.
And that was a turning point for me personally, because I was drowning in grief at the time. And, all those losses piled up, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't think that I had any right to grieve. I didn't think that a man had any stake and claim to any of this anger and resentment. And this was a way that I could finally say something and maybe just eke some good out of the situation. Because when I posted that, I got hundreds of emails and messages from, men and women, mostly women, from all ages, all different walks of life, who said, I walked that gauntlet 40 years ago, and I wish that I had said something, or I wish I had someone to say something. And so I kept all those emails. They're in my inbox. They meant the world to me. And honestly, they got me through that, because I felt I had finally found a way to have some kind of silver lining where I could maybe make sense of all this and do something good.
Mm-hmm. Was that the point too, where the book idea was born, or had you thought about writing a book before? You're like, obviously I have a platform here and people need this. They want to hear these thoughts. Is that kind of where it all began?
I don't know about the book then. I knew that, I was already blogging, so I definitely wrote about it. I think I had always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know about what. And I certainly didn't think back then, 10, 11 years ago, I didn't think that a market would even exist for a book like that.
Yeah, it didn't back then, because I can tell you from experience, right. I tried to write a book as well, because I'm also a journalist. And, I tried to write a book about my IVF experience, and nobody was interested. They were like, nope. nobody's going to buy this. There's no market for this. And this is only, God, it was after my son was born and he's just turned 6. So this is like 5 years ago.
Wow.
Not that long ago, and now thank God it's changed dramatically in the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad it has, because I think this is a conversation that just needs some sunlight.
Yeah.
And, the tough part for me, that was a good thing for me, but then the tough part was there was a lot of angst on MJ's side, because I felt a lot of shame, especially when I was, diagnosed with male factor infertility. That was not just a gut punch. It felt like just someone ripped everything that made me a man out.
Yeah.
And
when did that diagnosis come into play?
2012, a year or two later.
Yeah, I think Sam.
Yeah, because we hadn't had Sam yet. That was right before we did IVF. And so I could not talk about it with MJ. It hurt too much. I couldn't look at her. I felt too much shame. But what I could do, and this sounds ridiculous, but I think if you're not a blogger or a writer who's put stuff out on the internet, maybe you don't understand, but I couldn't say it to her because it hurt too much and it felt too much shame, but I could publish my thoughts to an audience of nameless, faceless strangers. And, what MJ didn't understand at the time was all of that was just me trying to communicate with her. But she was so mad that I couldn't communicate directly with her.
Yeah.
Read any of it.
Right. I get that. I understand that. So what was going on in your relationship? Was it pretty rocky?
I don't know if it was rocky, but it was definitely lacked communication. And there was always a silence between the two of us, especially when we were going and doing IVF and infertility. That was a big struggle for both of us, because Aaron was struggling with his male infertility, and he wasn't happy that it was him, that he actually wanted it to be me, and that it should be me going through it. Yeah,
that was definitely the whole point. And it was really not so much that I wanted it to be you. I just with the health problems that you had gone through, I just expected that it was you. And so I was shocked when it was me, and I turned into, I was already pretty idiotic, but I turned into a really big idiot. Like I felt so much hurt in that moment, and I didn't know how to react. And I ended up taking it out on MJ. I remember in the immediate aftermath where I found out that I was the problem, I thought, well, geez, if I have male infertility, how the heck did she get pregnant in the first place? And I asked her, I said, what, did you cheat on me? I'm like,
wow.
Is this kid even mine? And that was, put that at the top of things that you never want to say to your wife.
Totally.
And I couldn't help it. I was just spiraling.
Yeah.
Had no idea how to deal with it. And thankfully, MJ is a much better and more patient person than I am, because she seemed to understand that in the moment and cut some slack.
Wow. So tell me, when did the IVF come into play in your story? So at what point did you guys go down that road?
After the fourth loss?
Yeah, I think after the fourth loss, my primary care suggested that we go see somebody to rule out different things that are going on. And I ended up having a thyroid issue. He had male infertility. So we had two things going on at once. And it actually, we weren't on board with the IVF at first.
I have a deathly fear of needles. And when I found out that the shots were involved, to me and said, all right, you're going to be giving.
But you didn't have to get the shots. She did. But you had to give them.
No, but I had to give them to her. And it almost derailed the whole, that's how much of a baby I am about.
Right. Okay.
And she was like, are you kidding me? She's like, we're not going to have another kid because you can't handle giving me a shot.
Right.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
But that was, I think it took a little bit of convincing to I felt like if we couldn't do it naturally, then I had failed. Failed my only biological imperative. And so it took a little bit of coaxing to, get all that toxicity and crazy, stupid masculinity out of the way. and it still never really left. It subsided enough where we started doing the IVF, and we were both so ignorant before. We had never done anything like this. I didn't know what to expect. And I'll forget, being in the after the extraction of the eggs.
Oh, that was heartbreaking.
The retrieval. Yeah.
We were in the middle of two other people, and the curtains are up, and they got to both of these women before they got to us. So we were able to listen to what was happening. And the first woman, they said, all right, we retrieved, how many?
12.
Yeah, 12. I think we retrieved 12 eggs, and, they look good. And she was like, she didn't really sound thrilled. Like, she was like, oh, okay. And then the other person, like, they said that they retrieved 6 eggs, and she went crazy. She was screaming and crying like it was so in my head, I'm like, okay, 6 is really, really bad, and 12 is okay. I'm like, so we need to be above 6. And I had no idea. I had never done this before. I'm just listening to these poor women getting news and going through their own things and trying to find like where the heck we rate. And they came in to us and they're like, okay, well, we got 2. And I was like, huh? 2?
Oh, wow.
And they're like, and 1 really isn't great. So, really, even though technically you have 2, you have 1.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that sounds bad.
Yeah.
It was just, and thankfully, it took. That's when we got Sam.
Wow. Okay. So 1 egg, and then obviously turned into a healthy embryo.
Sam's second, our only IVF baby.
Oh, okay. So wait, tell me about having your first son too.
First son was
uneventful.
It was very uneventful. It was just, we had the loss beforehand.
Okay.
And we just kind of like, it sucked and it stung us, but we got pregnant fairly quickly after that. So it was like, we just kind of brushed it under the rug and like, let's pretend that never happened. Like that was horrible.
Got it. So this is your son, Will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you had the losses after that, the other losses you were telling me about. Okay. I just wanted to get the chronology straight. Thank you.
Yeah. So then that's when we kind of got battle tested in between Will and Sam.
Gotcha. Okay. So then tell me about when you guys found out you were pregnant with Sam and the IVF was successful.
That's actually a really funny story because it was Thanksgiving and I had taken a pregnancy test on a Wednesday and it was negative, and I was devastated because I was like, that's it. It didn't take. I'm done. I'm never going through this again. I can't have the shots again. All those feelings. And I had one more test left on that Thursday and it came up positive, but I didn't realize it because I had left it on the bathroom sink, and Aaron had jumped into the shower and he came out and he said, honey, did you leave the pregnancy test for me to see? And I was like, no. I was like, I forgot about it. He's like, it's positive.
Oh my God.
So Aaron actually found out we were pregnant before I did.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. That must've felt good. But were you guys nervous? I mean, after you experienced loss and especially what happened with, your other pregnancies, tell me about the anxiety and just going into this IVF pregnancy.
Oh, my anxiety was over the top. I was constantly checking, asking Aaron, making sure everything was okay, reading all the books, just trying to do anything I could to soothe my anxiety. And I had one scare in December. So Sam would have been 8 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
I started having blood clots.
Oof.
And Aaron wasn't home. I had to track him down and called him hysterical. Called the OB office and they were like, we'll get you in. We're on lunch, but we'll get you in right now. They must have thought I was crazy.
No, I'm sure they didn't think you were crazy, but I mean, that's so scary. I remember that too because I had secondary infertility. My son is 6 years younger than my daughter. And, after experiencing many losses myself, it was just that thing of like, every time you go to the bathroom and you wipe, you're like, please no blood, please no blood. Like it's so, I still get triggered. Like it still gives me the full body chills thinking about that, feeling that and thinking that, and that terror.
Yep. And that's why, I'd always been like, let's tell everyone everything right away person. But after all those losses, and then with Sam, we waited until after 12 weeks, I think.
Mm-hmm. First ultrasound.
Yeah. We were much more guarded. We didn't tell as many people. We didn't put it out on social media as much. And I remember I went through a period where I just refused to even believe it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I put it out of my head. Like I was happy she was pregnant. And then I was like, well, it's going to fail. So I'm not getting my hopes up. And I would honestly forget. And I'd say, hey, babe, do you want to go out to the bar? And she'd be looking at me like, what is wrong with you right now? But it's because I refused to let myself believe that it was actually going to happen.
Yeah. I think that's so common with this community and people who have suffered infertility or loss. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop because you're so used to disappointment that you're like, well, this isn't going to work out,
Mm-hmm. And that's the really, I won't say a cool part of writing the book, but a meaningful part of writing the book was talking to, we ended up with 9 in-depth interviews, and women, mostly men in this case, but just really getting into it with them about what they were feeling and feeling validated personally because it tracked with what I was feeling. And it's all the stuff that we never say as guys and we never allow ourselves to feel. And, talking with these guys and hearing all the things that they were saying about this was so comforting and gratifying. And MJ and I are so appreciative of them sharing their really personal stories. Mm-hmm. And I hope we did them all justice because they, that was the biggest part. That was the biggest thing we underestimated in writing this book. We came out with the idea. We posted it to our networks. We said, hey, what's everyone think about this? And it was overwhelming. Everyone was like, this is amazing. You need to write this book. That's such a good idea. That book really doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, all right, well, we're going to need, I don't want it to just be our story. I want it to be other people. And they said, yeah, interviews. We'll do interviews. And we lined up interviews. And one by one, they canceled or ghosted or said, hey, I was getting ready for this. And honestly, I just can't relive it. I'm sorry, which is completely understandable.
100%.
But we thought we'd have more people, and we underestimated, just how difficult it is to relive all this trauma, because I think people do have PTSD about this. Some people absolutely feel that way, and rightfully so. And so that's why, even though we only got 9 people, we so appreciate those 9 people because it's not easy putting this all out there.
Yeah. I think that every time I do an interview for this podcast, I'm just so grateful for all the men and women who have stepped up, and, everybody has the same goal behind it. It was like, well, I want to share my story because I wish I had this when I was going through it, or, I want someone to know they're not alone. So I think that it's so great when people do that. And again, thank you guys for talking about all of this. Can you tell me what happened next? So you had Sam, but you guys have 3 boys, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we were, so this is, 2014-ish. We were talking about whether or not we were done. Actually, MJ was talking about whether or not we were done. I was done. I was definitely done. I had enough. 2 was always my goal. And then all of a sudden MJ started talking about 3. And I was like, whoa, that's new information. So we had not settled on it at all. We were still going back and forth. And lo and behold, I remember I was at a hot dog stand right across the street from the middle school where MJ and I first met. And I was with, my oldest. He was playing on the playground. We were getting some food. And she calls me, not hysterical, but like in her happy voice. She's like, you need to come home. I said, what's wrong? She's like, I am fucking pregnant. And I'm like, what? No. And I was, for the first time, I had longed to hear those words before. Those are the words that I always wanted to hear. And this time was a different experience because I didn't necessarily want to hear those words.
Interesting.
I remember just the flood of emotions. I gathered Will up. I got in the car And I was just like, how do I feel about this? And like, I'm looking at the school where we first met, and then I'm looking at my kid in the rearview mirror and trying to process all this. And, in that car ride home, I kind of realized like, yeah, of course I want another kid. This is, it's another kid with the person I love. And it's going to be great. And then I think a few weeks later, just as I was really coming around to all that, we had another early loss.
Oh,
and that one was, different. That one was like, for me anyway, that one was almost more peaceful. It was just like, we had been there so many times.
Yeah.
And we just kind of made, not that it was good, maybe peaceful is the wrong word, but it was just kind of like, yep,
familiar territory.
Yeah, exactly. We continued to talk about whether or not we were going to have a kid. And then, as often happens, I think nature just kind of decided for us. And in early 2015, we found out that, we were pregnant with Tommy. And
so you did not do IVF for Tommy?
No, but I had gone to the doctor to do, when you go for IVF and infertility, they do like a physical checkup and check your blood count and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Started the process and to possibly do.
You did?
Yes. You knew that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
We're breaking news on this podcast.
To see what it entailed again. And like 3 days later, I found out I was pregnant.
Yeah. So 8 or 9 times pregnant, 5, 6 losses, and thankfully healthy kids, which is
And
how lucky we're so lucky, because a lot of people don't get to that point. So, as tough as our road was, other people have it so much tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pregnancy with Tommy was uneventful in terms of, health issues and stuff, and everything was okay?
Yeah, he was the easiest.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You were in crazy shape too. You ran a 5K at like 22 weeks or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Awesome. If anybody's listening right now and is just kind of in the thick of it, in like the shit, in the weeds, is there anything that you guys would want to say to somebody just in terms of getting through this, or, advice or things you wish you would have known?
I would, things I wish I would have known. I would communicate directly and openly, even when it's messy and ugly and even sometimes nasty. I feel like I made things exponentially more difficult in our relationship and strained our relationship because I couldn't bring myself to get over my own shame and guilt and just talk to my wife directly. And eventually we got there, but a lack of communication really dooms relationships. And so if I had just been honest and raw about talking about how I felt, I feel like we could have got to the good place that we got to much sooner and with much less pain. So I know that it's hard, especially, and I can only speak from the male perspective, because this stuff is so not supposed to be talked about by men, but we can change that. And we could change that, because it doesn't just benefit us, it benefits everyone. And if men are serious about, we're the protectors, we want to protect our family. Well, I guarantee you that the best way to protect your relationship and your family is to talk things out. Because if you don't, it is a shit show. And so if you really want to protect your family, be honest and upfront and talk about this stuff, because, you do have a right to grieve. You do have a right to feel these things. These are real feelings, and you're entitled to them. And that's what I want guys to know about this. And women, if it's a heterosexual relationship, I try to tell women he does care, just because, 99% of the time he cares about this. Just because he's silent please don't equate silence or being withdrawn with a lack of interest or caring, because that's not the case. We don't always know how to express it, or even if we can express it. So just keep prying and keep at those conversations, because once you lift the veil off, things get a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Okay. MJ, what about you?
Make sure that you take all the support that you can get from friends and family and your spouse or significant other. I made sure that I isolated myself when I was going through everything as to not offend anybody or hurt anybody's feelings. If I had known what I know now, I should have been more open to asking for help and support, and just make sure that people, and if people are giving you unsolicited advice, stand up for yourself.
There's a whole chapter in the book on that.
Yes. Let's talk about that really quickly before we close out. What were some of the things that people said to you and what were your responses?
Oh man, just,
give me like your best one.
Even what the doctor said to MJ, well, maybe it's time to stop. Like, fuck you. Just that's not what anyone wants to hear while they're lying on the operating table. There might be a time and a place for that, and that ain't it.
Yeah.
But your kid's in a better place. Just go to hell. Like, really, your kid's in a better place. Stop it. Who wants to hear that stuff? Just sit and be uncomfortable with people and say, God damn it, this is hard, and I'm sorry. That's what people need to hear. They just need you to sit down there in the mud with them for a little bit so that you're not alone. And no one wants to hear some of the stuff. Even I said, like, oh, now we can try again. Trying is the fun part. Just when in doubt, say less and, empathize more.
Okay, thank you guys so much for listening. Erin and MJ, I loved talking to you guys. Could have gone on and on. Definitely check out their book, everybody. It's called Men in Miscarriage, A Dad's Guide to Grief, Relationships, and Healing After Loss. I also watched the YouTube clip that Erin referred to during our conversation. If you want, Google dad confronts abortion protesters or something to that nature, and you will see the video as it unfolded and as it happened. I also wanted to let you guys know about Fertility Rally in case you don't know already. So Fertility Rally is a community. We've got 24/7 community. We've got content. We've got curated events. And we are there to help you guys, to help anybody that's going through this, no matter what your situation is. So check us out. Our website is fertilityrally.com. You can see more on Instagram at Fertility Rally. We open up the first week of every month. So we'll open up again January 1st. But you can get on our wait list now so that you know exactly when the doors open. We would love to have you. We'd love to be there for you. We have incredible support groups that have become kind of the main bread and butter, if you will, of the group. Everybody loves our group, our support groups, and it's just such an incredibly supportive community who is there to hold each other's hand and cheer each other on and answer each other's questions. So check out fertilityrally.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys next time.